Welcome to our New Tracks Meetup. Thank you so much for coming this evening. We really appreciate it. Hope you'll come back often and tell your friends about us. First, I would like to suggest that anybody who is new, please go to our website, newtracksmodeling.com, newtracksmodeling.com, and register on the site. And you'll be sure not to miss any of our shows or our train shows, because you'll get an email beforehand telling you not to miss them. So I hope that you'll do that for us. Our train show, the next one is January the 16th and 17th of 2021. I can't believe this year is almost gone. At 1 o'clock Eastern time in the afternoon, we have two great sponsors. The Great Scale Model Train Show from Timonian, Maryland, and MRH Media, LLC, Joe Fugate's company. And we sure do appreciate all of their help with the train show. Our next My Build is going to be December the 23rd. We have one coming up Saturday, December the 12th, but the one after that will be December the 23rd. And Dylan, if you can put Chris's card up. This is Chris Coates's email address, and if you'll email him, he'll make sure that you get in to be able to show your models and tell us about what you're doing. Next thing I'd like to talk about is the people that are putting these shows on, both this show as well as the train show. We all need some help. I need help. I need a person who can help with the research that I do and can also help with coordinating all of the activities that we've got going. So if you're interested in working with me, and that would be a challenge, I think, but if you're interested, and I hope you'll contact me at my email address, and let's talk about it. I have some specific things that I'd really like to do, but I'm running out of time, and it's so frustrating for me. But I guess I'm just getting too old to be able to do the things that I used to do, and I just need some help. Dylan, I know you want to talk about the help that you need.
All right. So, like Jim said, we are basically looking to get some more hands on deck. This is basically an all-volunteer ship, and for the most part, while it runs well, it wouldn't hurt to have the extra set of hands. Me personally, I need somebody to basically help me with the Zoom side of things. While I can manage the Zoom and all that easily enough, having an extra set of hands that knows how to work the Zoom, can keep an eye on the live stream on YouTube, stuff like that, that'll be helpful for us. Because if, God forbid, something happens to me, where's the show? So we want to make sure we have somebody who can pinch hit as needed, and at the same time, if we run into a problem, can help me deal with it. Because I am one person. I'm not Superman, not going to pretend to be. But if you're interested, shoot me a message, whether it be on Facebook, on my on Lambert Locomotive Works Facebook page, or you can shoot me an email at lambertlocomotiveworks@gmail.com. Basically, just if you're interested, shoot me a line. I'll be glad to talk to you. Just because, like I said, this is an all-volunteer ship, but never hurts to have the extra set of hands lying around because we could certainly use them. Back to you, Jim.
And now, TC, I know you need some help, so you want to talk about the help that you need.
Well, yeah. Let's see, I'm not highlighting for some reason. Anyway, no, definitely. Could use someone who's knowledgeable with CSS. Contact me. I'm putting my email in the chat. And we also need a couple of other people. We could really use some help with the monitoring. I monitor the chat a bit, but there's no one monitoring the YouTube chat. So it needs someone who's knowledgeable with YouTube, especially live shows and how they work, or is willing to learn it intensely, that can help us monitor that and cut and paste and all the other stuff that everybody needs. And then, especially at train shows, we need somebody who can help us with the placards and sharing their screen at the right time and starting timers and recordings. And details can be gotten from myself or from Dylan, and we'll do that. Edward Caddy asked, how many screens do you need to do the Zoom meetings? As an assistant, 1. 2's better, 5 is even better, but that's another story. So yeah, just a couple of assistants to help us watch things, take some of the labor-intensive stuff during the train shows, so one person isn't trying to do everything. And back to you, Jim.
Thank you, TC. And Chris, of course, is not here this evening, but I do want to mention the marketing aspects of this. I feel strongly we need somebody that's skilled in media, particularly the digital media that we're working on right now. This is so new to us. The Zoom is so new to us. This conferencing that we started back in May. You know, we've been doing these now two times a week since May the 1st, over 7 months. And we're booked now with people through March of next year, twice a week on these shows. We need somebody who is a specialist in the media, because I'm certainly not. And it's so new that we could appreciate the help in that from a marketing standpoint, to know where we should be going, how we should be going, and the most effective way for us to do it. The other thing too that I feel strongly about, I'm an O-scale modeler. I think that we need people on our team that represent all of the scales. In other words, I need somebody who is an N-scale modeler, who knows the manufacturers. I don't. Who knows the issues in N-scale. I don't. Who knows what we need to invite people on our shows to talk about for N-scale. I'm guessing when I do that. So I need an N-scale modeler who can be our advisor. I need the same thing in HO, because I'm not an HO modeler. I need the same thing in S-scale. Even though I write articles about S-scale, my articles are about mentoring and about model builders who I believe have extremely great talents that can be mentors for other people building in S-scale. O-scale, I know a lot of people, but I don't know everybody. I don't go to the train shows like I used to. I'm not in all different parts of the country. I'm not on the West Coast. I don't know all of the O-scalers. So I need somebody that can bring that kind of help to the team. G-scale, same situation. Live steam, same situation. Ride on trains, same situation. Z-scale, same situation. So if you are knowledgeable in any one of those scales, if that's your scale, please contact me, because I'd love to get you involved in our activities, to be able to give us some advice and really push us in certain areas that maybe we haven't even thought about because we're not specific to your scale. So if you would do that, I would sure appreciate it. Or if you've got friends that you think might be interested, please tell them to at least contact me and we can at least talk about it. Now I'd like to turn to one of my heroes, Paul Thomson, who came up with this quick tips idea. And because he came up with it, we asked him to do it for us. And he said he would. So Paul, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Jim. And tonight, I hope it will be a quick tip. Dylan, can I have the first slide up, please?
You got it. Coming right up.
Okay, what you're looking at is a coupler gauge or height gauge, KDHO. My point here is that no matter what scale you're in, you need a gauge, you need a standard to start from to improve your running. This isn't so much really a tip as perhaps a fact. Now, next slide, please, Dylan. You can gain a lot of information from these things as to how your cars run, etc. But my specific tip tonight is more or less in the way that I'm using this thing. Next slide, please, Dylan. Because I put it on the end of a switch. I find that running in Freemo, I had most of my problems occurred around switches, especially with couplers, especially with KDs with that little wee wire hanging down. So what I did here was I mounted the gauge on a switch, and now I can run this car to the gauge, make sure everything's right, and immediately take it back. And next slide, please, Dylan. See exactly where the problems are. Very often you'll find that if a coupler moves up and down, it'll snag in a switch. And that's what you're looking for here. And that's my tip for tonight. Mount your gauge on something like this on your desk where you can see it. And it makes it a lot simpler to track down some of your problems. Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much. I really do appreciate it, Paul. And I think this is a great idea. I really think you're bringing a lot of points out that a lot of us have forgotten and just really don't think about. But it's great advice and real helpful to a lot of particularly new modelers coming into the hobby. So thank you so much. Starting the 1st of January, our Wednesday shows are going to be a little different, because we're going to have some really talented modelers talk to us for short periods of time, 15 minutes each, about some various subjects that I think you'll be interested in. Phillip Richards has agreed to talk to us for 15 minutes. Phillip is one fantastic modeler. Loves scratch building, builds cars, builds locomotives. I think you're really going to enjoy what he talks about and learn an awful lot about what he does and how he does it. Jim Murphy, great modeler, does fantastic automation with lights and movement of people and movement of items and sound on his layout. And I think he's going to bring some really interesting possibilities to us about what automation might add to our model railroading. Bob Farquhar is going to talk about structure building techniques. And Bob is a fantastic modeler. We've had him on one of our shows. You've seen his modeling before. And he is one really talented modeler. And we're fortunate to have him agree to want to share with us the building techniques that he uses on his structures. So Bob, thank you so much. Now, I'm looking for other people that can do other things on a special basis, either a Wednesday or a Saturday show, for no more than 15 minutes, once a month. That's all I'm asking. I'd like somebody to talk about scenery. If you're interested, Dylan, if you'll put my email up again, please let me know, because I'm looking for somebody that can talk about scenery building and what's involved and how to do it for 15 minutes once a month. I'd also like somebody to talk about running the layout and how the layouts are operated around the country. Show people's layouts, show them in operation, 15 minutes a time, once a month. I'd like somebody to talk about the clubs around the world. I'd like them to be able to maybe have somebody from the club visit us once a month and talk about their club and what their activities are. This may not be great for everybody, but it'll give us a good feel, I think, for the importance of the clubs to the hobby and what the clubs around the country and around the world are doing in today's markets. Figures, both the creation of figures, the painting of figures, the sculpting of figures. I'd like somebody to talk about that once a month and what's available in the different scales and what's needed in the different scales, and concentrate on the figures for our model railroads. So that'll give you an idea of the kind of people that I'm looking for. And if anybody is interested in any of those subjects or another subject, please let me know and we can talk about it. Well, that's enough for me tonight. Now I'd like to talk to Darren Johns. Darren is from Australia. It's already tomorrow there. And Darren has a beautiful layout. He's been on our show before talking about automation and computerization of his layouts. Darren is the first person that I've ever met that shared with me how to totally computerize a model railroad. I'd never seen it before, never even heard it, didn't even know it was possible. So Darren, I thank you. I welcome you back, and we're looking forward to seeing what you're doing today.
Thank you very much, everyone. So yes, my funny language that you're hearing is I'm from Southern Australia, who the people that don't know me. So we'll start screen sharing if we could. And I'll have a little PowerPoint presentation that I prepared, not so much just on the computerization of my layout, but sort of the overview of what I call the fallen log layout, fallen log railway, I should say, as it stands today. So my layout is predominantly European based. Era is what they call 1 and 2. So we're looking at sort of late 1800s to sort of fairly early 1900s. Don't know why I like European railways. It's just my local store had a lot of lovely European locomotives that I like, so I'm predominantly into steam. So that's sort of the direction I went. I also model some Australian locomotives and rolling stock from my part of the world, from my childhood when I grew up with my grandfather. Used to take me across the road from his house and watch trains that would head out east to the eastern seaboard of Australia. So a bit of a funny story regarding how the fallen log railways, obviously we've got a European layout with sort of an American name, but I call it a railway, so it's sort of a conglomeration of everything worldwide regarding model trains, I think. So we, in 2009, we moved to a rural acreage property in the Adelaide Hills in South Australia, and there was not it's all cow paddocks, or was at that point in time. We had all the family at handover after the bank gave us the keys to the premises, so to speak, or keys to the property. And my wife's grandfather, who's now since passed away, had a lot of logs and everything fallen over. Obviously had to clean up, and he goes, "Oh, look at all these fallen logs. It'll be good for your, for your open fire that we've obviously when we build a house." So I thought, moving forward, fallen log railway, that's sort of how it got its affectionately got its name. So okay, so I came up with a little bit of a timeline of how this layout sort of came together. Some parts of it were from a previous layout when just after I got married to my wife. So we moved in sort of 2009 and obviously 2020, and over quite a span of obviously 12 years is a long time to be putting a layout together, but it's quite, how do you sort of narrow it down to sort of time frames about, so top sort of left is my young daughter. She's now 12 years of age. She used to love coming out. I love that little photo. She used to come out and sit out when I used to have to take care of her while mum went off to work. So she was always, she loves coming out today and playing with the trains and helping me. She paints people, Jim. She's very good at it. So maybe she's the one that needs to come and talk about that. So yeah, as I said, we moved in 2009. I'll show you in a sec sort of a schematic of, well, not a schematic, but a layout diagram of the layout for people that haven't seen it. So the previous section from my last layout, what I call Beltoma staging area, sort of that was salvaged, and then I sort of started the layout properly sort of within the coming years. Obviously young family, it was hard to get into the trains at that point in time. Sort of quite a number of years later is when I sort of started getting into digital command control, and obviously train controller, trying various command stations. I'm now settled with Roco Z21, which is the black box version. So 2018 is obviously another milestone with quite a large, I've got that incorrect. That is Beltoma. That's Batunga staging is the first one that got salvaged, so apologies for that. And then completion of track work honestly happened this year. Haven't driven the Golden Spike yet, but the last set of track is this portion of what I call the Harold Victor Harbour, which is named after my grandfather, which is this area, this photo on the bottom right-hand corner. So this is the sort of a drawing of, probably version 2 drawing of the fallen log railway. So it's housed in a 30 by 30 structure. In my language, it's sort of 10 meters by 10 meters, give or take. It's a sort of a walk-in aisleway design. So you can sort of see my mouse cursor. You can sort of come in from this angle here, and it's like a big L shape that you sort of walk around into the layout, and you'll see that as the photos sort of transpire of how it's come about. So we're looking at, so as I said, walk-in aisleway. I sort of wanted one feature. I didn't want any duck unders, obviously because I'm not getting any younger myself, and I didn't want to have to, and I had an elderly father helping me build it, so that was one of the design features. We're looking at approximately 300 feet of mainline track, I suppose, in that. It's all double track. Looking at around, as it was as probably a few weeks ago when I went and had counted them, around 150 turnouts or switches, depending on what part of the world you're from, on the layout. And I'm looking at 210 separated, isolated current detection blocks within the layout, and that's becomes very apparent when I start doing the train controller side of things. I have one main classification yard, which I call Belair Yard. All the names of various portions of my layout are predominantly either areas of my childhood, or obviously I have my Alpine region named after my wife, who allows me so much time out in the train shed, which is lovely. So I'm very lucky there. So I have 3 staging yards, which is approximately 18 tracks in all. They can take what I would say my full length train. So I think the longest staging yards are about 18 to 20 feet long, most of the tracks. The radius I'm looking at is quite narrow, I suppose, for some American standards. European don't quite require the European rolling stock, and locomotives don't require really broad radiuses. So sort of around the 4 foot mark. So I run predominantly, obviously, freight and passenger train operations, which is another aspect I'm getting into, exactly how I'm going to run this with train controller. And I'm in, as I said, in the process of designing a switch list and waybill operation. The waybills I make with a program that I bought called Shenaware, I think it is, that make all the waybills up, which is an American chap out of Florida, I think, Jim. Mm-hmm. And I've sort of designing to populate my switch lists, a barcoding system on the back of each of the car cards, so to speak, so it populates them out a lot quicker. So the electronic... Sorry?
Darren, what was the name of that program again?
The program is Shenaware, but it's actually called Waybills.
Okay.
And he does another one. He does an inventory program as well. I can send you the links if you'd like at the end of it.
Yeah, I would appreciate it. Thank you.
And he's quite if you have any issues with it, because it's all sort of, it's quite a good program, how it all populates out. So I think, I don't know if it's an N scaler out of Arizona, Eric Tonks, I think it is. I don't know if you're aware of him. His operating system he runs is with these types of car cards. So it's quite a lovely little program.
Okay.
Anyway, so
thank you.
Electronic specification. Sorry, that's a little bit the contrast on that. I was playing with that this morning, but I'll read it out to you. So as I said, the DCC system I've got is a capital Z21, which runs all the different LocoNet buses, sniffer bus, and all sort of everything in between, for the detection and the like. It's also via Wi-Fi, so all my controllers are Wi-Fi based, or I've got applications on my phone, which either from Train Controller or Roku Z21. So I've got the flexibility there. So I don't need a lot of physical Roco controllers. I've only sort of run 4 of them for my ops sessions. So I've divided up the layout in this point in time into 8 power districts. So they're 5 amp power districts, and they're all Thames Valley Depot, what they call dumb boosters. So they seem to work quite nicely. With Duncan McRae has helped me through that over the last few years to integrate how that comes about. Obviously with that, I run also separate circuit breakers through DCC Concept. So that's the PSX ones. So the reason I do that is there's a little more control with CVs and how fast they interact with shorts and all that than the Thames Valley. So they're just a wide in parallel series, I should say. For the people who've seen me before, yes, the layout is automated by train control software, which I'll talk about a little bit more in a sec. All the 150, 149, whatever I came up with, turnouts or switches are all motored by either Tortoise motors, Roco, or DCC Concept motors. I'm sort of in the process of phasing out the DCC Concepts because I'm having a few troubles with them. Tortoise, I think, moving forward, I think they're just the Rock of Gibraltar. They just don't fault, and they're just so simple to fix if needs be. So shameless plug for them. They make a lovely product. All turnouts obviously controlled by the on a personal computer screen. I don't have any wired traditional type control panels on my layout. And all the 210 occupancy detections are all controlled by a protocol called S88N, which is sort of a European. So the brands I'm using is Lefinsky or LDT and Digitize. I'm just venturing out into the LocoNet side of things with it. I've just ordered some LocoNet modules purely because the S88 of pretty well for the communication bus infrastructure due to the physical length I've got the runs. I'm having a few issues with it. So I'm at the sort of the outer limits of what it can do from over a given distance. There's a lot of reverse loops in this layout, and I've sort of wired mine a little bit uniquely. So anywhere I've got a train obviously turning around before it hits a set of points or the like, I've got a reverse loop module. So there's probably approximately 6 of those, and they're all DCC Concepts PSX ARs that I'm using for those. So is it any questions on any of that so far?
Darren, did you build a structure for this as opposed to in a basement?
I did, yes. We don't have basements very much in Australia, so it's like
That's what I've heard.
Yeah, a standalone, what I suppose in your terminology, in your part of the world, it's like a barn, I suppose, but it's all corrugated iron. So that structure in itself is 60 feet long, but obviously half of it's workshop and storage for bikes and other train stuff. So I'm lucky to get 30 by 30, but it's sort of divided down the middle. The structure, as you'll see the photos as they populate out, it is totally insulated with what we call an insulation bat, and then we put like our part of the world, it's called sarking. It's like an aluminium on the outside. It's just assists with moisture, so you don't get moisture coming through.
Darren, why did you go to the extent of computerization that you've gone to?
That's a very good question. Sometimes I ask that same question myself when I have troubles with it. I suppose, rightly or wrongly, I thought initially, particularly with the control panel side of things, it was going to be less wiring. Boy, was I wrong with that. Because obviously computerization, you've got to have all the blocks. But I suppose as you're sort of breaking it down to individual circuits, that the wiring is very, very simple. it's 2 wires coming into a control module and 1 wire coming out, and one sort of common bus feed, I suppose, that goes around the layout. So I've always liked computers. I like technology. I'll probably, if you want me to come back on another stage, something else I've been looking into is virtual operations. So Jim, at some stage you'll be able to run my layout from your home and watch via CCTV your trains running around my layout. So that's what I'm working on now. That's probably a whole nother thing that I'm looking into, remote operations. So that's sort of where it's geared towards, I suppose. The love of computers. I'm not saying I'm any good at it, but yeah, so that's pretty well why I got into train controller anyway. So
Got it. Thank you.
So yeah, as we've touched on, so what train controller is a off-the-shelf, I think to coin Jim's phrase in an article he wrote about it, piece of software out of Germany that he coins with Freiwald, Jürgen Freiwald, who's the designer and owner of the company, coins the phrase perfectly operated mobile model railroads effectively. So so on the pictures that you can see there, all the individual what we call switchboards, so the different parts of my layout as they stand for today. So the top left here is my main the top left you can see is this the Belee yard section. That's my major sort of classification yard area. So from that I can control points or turnouts and automation from the click of a button off the computer screen effectively. So I think Jim, you've sort of started up a very topical, heatedly debated debate. Is I think this is not my phrase, this is Jim's phrase, is computerization bad for the hobby? I personally don't think so. I think it's the way forward with the hobby. I think I'm a very strong believer to get the youth, so I'm 45 years of age and I'm considered young to be in this hobby, so to get the youth into the world's best hobby, as they call it, we need to be attractive to them, and I think computerization is one way of doing it. Kids of today are very, very tech savvy. I thought I was tech savvy, but what the kids are doing today on, my kids just at school on iPads is unbelievable, like robotics and coding and all sorts of things. So I think it's quite important that we, push computerization forward.
Why do you think that it's taken off so much in Europe and other places in the world and not in the United States?
Europeans run their trains very differently. They're more rail fans, is my understanding, whereas Americans are into the more the prototypical operations and switchless and waybills. So I'm trying to sit on the fence with mine and come in between. I think that's probably the major reason that they like sitting out at a control panel watching 30 trains go around. That's what they like to do. So it's quite obvious one person can't control and monitor that amount of trains. So the logic behind that is to go to train controller or a like program, there is others out there, is what they do, I suppose. And that's probably the big difference that I think I can see is probably the way the trains are operated or what they want to achieve with it.
Thanks so much.
So yes, train controller for some is cost prohibitive over JMRI. JMRI is obviously a free version to a certain extent. I don't know a lot about JMRI. I know it has various aspects to it. I use the Decoder Pro side of things for some of my decoders, but how JMRI runs, I'm probably not the person. But I think Jim and I, please refresh my memory, had a gentleman here with an absolute enormous layout that ran on train controller, probably in the last month or two. He basically said along the lines of the difference between the two is out of the box, train controller does everything, whereas the JMRI has the tools to do everything the train controller does. You just got to know how to program it. I think that's my understanding, and please step in if someone knows more about JMRI than what I do. So it's very much a Windows-based interface. It does not run on Mac computers, and I don't think it, since the early versions, I don't think it ever has. So if you're a Mac user, apologies, you can't run train controller on a PC unless there's probably other ways around it. I think you can set Macs up to run like a Windows-based type operating system. It's got a very good online forum. This is train controller. Then there's a lot of fantastic people. It's got an English and a German version that are more than willing to help. Like all forums, you've got to be careful about who you're asking the question to, because obviously you can get led up the garden path. I was lucky enough to meet a gentleman from Munich that has helped me immensely, probably the last 5 or 6 years. His part of Germany have been hit quite significantly with the coronavirus, and I have not heard from him for 6 months. So I've sent numerous emails, so I'm hoping he's just bunkering down somewhere, and he hasn't passed on, and I've got no way of finding out. So he's helped me immensely, this gentleman. So there's 3 levels of the software: gold, silver, and bronze. I've got the gold version. I've never really gone into what the different versions are. They are significantly differently priced. I think the major thing is more to do with what the coding side of things and how deep you can program things within it. As I said, I've never really gone into the differences of it, but it's all outlined on the website. Probably the biggest thing from my point of view is, and Jim, just to couple in what you were saying, why has this taken off in Europe and not so much probably the America side of things, is that the museum type running or the rail fanning, it's got pure collision avoidance within reason. Obviously, you can still get glitches in the system if you get ghosting occupancy. That runs on occupancy, so it can only know where a train is by current detection. So if there's something that happens there and it happens on mine, every now and again you'll have a glitch. So there is a human aspect monitoring to it. So, and as I sort of touched on before, no need to wire what I found in previous layouts, cumbersome control panels. So it's cut down the wiring in regards to that significantly, but increased occupancy detection wiring tenfold at least, I would think. So, so we touched a little bit on this, why I went train controller. I suppose I'm a little bit biased here. I believe it's the best off the shelf, and I've tried a few others in my time. As we sort of touched on before, JMRI has the tools to do all this, but there's more coding. There is a lot of coding in train controller as well, but there's more in the back end, is my understanding, with the JMRI. I just see probably another thing, Jim, also for you as well, why have I got into this, would be, I just see another aspect of rivet counting in our hobby. Some people are rivet counting in regards to how a particular wagon needs to look, or how they might weather something up, or how a locomotive needs to look out of the box ready to run or scratch built. I just see this as another arm of my rivet counting, is the computer operations side of things. So sorry, any questions? I've been talking a lot there.
Yeah, I have a question. This is Phil in Atlanta, Georgia. You mentioned that you have a 4-foot minimum radius.
Yeah, correct.
Is that correct?
Correct,
and my
yeah.
question is, where you have a reverse loop that's put back against the wall, how do you access the part that's adjacent to the wall that you cannot reach from the front aisle?
Okay. I do have photos of that, but not on this. So basically, like all layouts, I've made so many errors in this, in building this. But the bits I have got right are, so when you'll see some photos coming up after this, the train control a bit of sort of how the layout came together. The two major sections of the layout are away from the wall. So I've got like a very narrow aisleway against the wall so I can get around the back of it. So that was one thing I did make. There was another section I didn't do that, and I had all sorts of trouble, and I had to get my kids to help me scenic it because I just couldn't get to it. And I made a bit of a tongue-in-cheek video about it, how not to do model train scenery on it, because I got all excited as we do trying to get scenery, because scenery is one of those things that, you know, you can see the progress very quickly. And I did the scenery at the front stupidly, where I should have done it from the back working forward. So big layouts, you need to be able to access all the way around if you can. That's my advice. So
thank you.
So another reason I've sort of gone into train control, and another big rabbit hole I'm going down into the virtual operation side of things, is due to my physical location, and within Australia I have limited operators. So I needed something that I could, you know, still have a lot of trains running around doing their own thing, so to speak, creating what I suppose bridge traffic, I suppose, from what we call it in my part of the world anyway, that I can still run. This is another feature of train controller. So train controller I've set up in a way I can have trains either running fully automatic, keeping away from each other with a collision avoidance side of things, or I can run them sort of what I'm calling semi-manual. So what that means is I have full control over all functions, the stop and go of it. But if I come up to a red signal and the system thinks I'm not going to stop in time, the computer will take over and it'll stop my train for me. So train control is sort of modular in how, and I think coming up in a few next slide, I've got one how sort of some of the schedules come together. So schedules within train controller are not a time schedule, so it's not like a train leaving station A to station B at 7 o'clock in the morning. Schedules are purely geographically based within layout. So how you're going to get a train from A to B to C and vice versa. Route control. Okay, so route control is train control is a bit unique in the way it controls the trains. Not only is it controlling the blocks, and you can see the blocks are represented with these little white rectangles here, but so if you can see where I'm pointing at here to here, you've got the two routes that can intersect. It controls the route between them as well. So what that actually does, it locks turnout. So if you've got a long train that's overhanging turnouts and the like, an automatic train then can't switch the turnout under a long freight train that's going through a given area. So it's all part of the collision avoidance sort of mechanism within but that's all calculated as a part of when you set up the schedule. You don't need to do anything there. The computer does all those calculations for you. So this is sort of a schedule. I don't know how well you can see that, but the train is this is like a sort of two sort of rail car schedules that I have running. So just between two stations, so through the scenic part. So this is all automatic operated, so that these trains will just transverse backwards and forwards until I decide to stop them. So, and I don't know how well you can see how it interacts with the train control screen. So you can sort of see the red dots.
Did you click the optimized video when you shared? You may want to reshare and do that when you do a video, because it'll smooth it out. It's really jumpy.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah, there's a button when you share at the bottom. There's a little button you click to optimize video, and it changes the frame rate to match the video frame rate.
Is that
so when you
Zoom,
share with Zoom, so you have to unshare with Zoom, stop sharing.
Okay.
And then reshare. And when you reshare, there's a button at the bottom that says optimize for video.
Oh, okay. Excellent. Yeah, wasn't aware of that.
No worries.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that advice. That's great. So That's
So if
yeah.
if you run it now, it'll be smoother for us. We'll see it better.
How's that? So these, yeah, as I said, these are automatic schedules. So in between, so I'll finish that now. Whilst I'm talking, I'll play that back over. So this line here is going to a town called Barwon, which is sort of on the left-hand side here. So you imagine these trains are running, and I've got to run freight trains in between the schedules on the rail cars. So this is where
Darren, can you turn the sound down? We can't hear you.
Oh, okay. All right. Oh, there we go. There we go. How's that?
Great.
Yeah.
Is that better?
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. So basically the way, so my freight trains, what I was just saying there. So these trains will transverse backwards and forwards until I stop them, but then I run freight trains in between this, and I sort of, you can't sort of see it off screen, but once we get back over to the schematic of there's a sort of a whole industry in behind my brewery here that I switch out. So this is where train controller, I suppose, comes into its own, that sort of keeps away all the various the collision avoidance side of things. So here's a very basic tutorial on how train controller goes together. So I'll bring up a fresh screen there. So this is how it starts. It's sort of the building blocks of train controller. So sort of it's very easy, sort of the way it sort of comes about. It's just you go onto there, it's like a little pen tool. I'm clicking on there. Then it's just a matter of, it's all with your mouse, and you can literally just draw your layout. Obviously this is very, very, very simple. So if you want to put curves in and the like, train controller is limited in it. It sort of does, because it's modular in its approach, you can't do like transition type curves, or like a circly type curve. You can only do like what I've represented there, or sort of make some sort of hexagon shape and sort of way it comes around. So, and all the turnouts, you just put them in all there, and then obviously you go through the program, and then you then have to define all the blocks and all that. So it's quite intuitive the way you sort of put the information onto the screen. There is obviously, you can go into, as I'm sort of going there, more specific type, double slip switches, single slip switches, diamond switches. It's got everything that you're going to need specifically that you want to. Then you build it as you go. So is any questions sort of around that sort of things?
So what you're really saying is that this software, you really don't have to be a programmer. All you have to do is just kind of answer the questions that the computer is asking you.
Correct. Yeah. So the way the logic works is it works on sort of, if everything works around conditions. So if you want to do something, it's like a yes or no answer, as you say. So if you want to do A, B, and C, well, you might say for A to be a yes, I suppose, on the side of things, to put it very, very simple terms. You got to answer the questions and put it in a string of code, I suppose. Not quite like JMRI, so to speak, but yeah, so it gets a little bit complex regarding that, but the basic building blocks to get trains running is just done as we are here. And I'm sort of going through into here. So what I'm representing here is this track along the bottom here. Besides, to take out that rail I've sort of played around with the middle, this is exactly the same, because the way train controller can work, I don't know if you can see these little, what they call connectors at each end. So this is where you can make more realistic schematic type layout definition, I suppose, within your switchboards. So what train controller sees as a train coming from block 1 through 2 to 4 here, it'll get to this block 4 and it'll go, okay, I now know there's a connector at the other end here. So it thinks it just the way the train controller treats it is if it's a loop of track. So that can become quite handy if you, I know some of the American chaps that do run this program will actually do that. So what I'm doing here is adding all the detection blocks. So you can see I've put, sorry, was there a question there? No question? Okay, so here what I'm doing, I'm adding all the detection blocks. So it's just a matter of adding the infrastructure, and then you go into your various, depending on what DCC system you've done here. So this is my Roku Z21. So I won't go into the exact addressing of it because it's very different depending on what you're running. So here, Jim, this is where you start setting up any of the automation side of things. You can set up all sorts of delays, and so a train can come into a given block and you can set up a delay, but that delay can then be answered by a question. Okay, the delay only happens for a certain train or a certain schedule or a certain time of the day. So it's a myriad of things what you can do. You can do operations coming into a block. Quite often I'll have into mine, so it'll come, say, out of a tunnel entrance, and it'll automatically ring its bell or toot its horn or whatever, flash its lights, or whatever you want to do. You know, the sky's the limit on the automation side of things, what you want to do with it. So to sort of get it running within the system, you do need at least the blocks here. You can set up sort of, I don't know if you can see that interface screen there, exactly like speed limits within it, the direction of travel, and so forth. So what I'm going into here is how you define your information within the turnouts or the switches. So it's exactly the same. So these are all your accessory decoders. So obviously mine's a Roku system, so it's just a matter of finding the correct address. The beauty of this is, if it's anything like mine, you wire them around the wrong way, the motor, you don't need to get back under and rewire it. You can just flick what they call the output configuration on it. And some guys have gone one step further with their automation. So Train Controller doesn't require the routes between blocks to be detected. So the route control is sophisticated enough that it'll know between blocks, say 1 and 2 on that screen there, that the route is locked down or is reserved. But there is a lot of people that, so you can add occupancy detection to the turnouts as well, and you can just there's a way you can sort of make them sort of come up and show any given color to show that they're occupied. So a lot of guys are doing that on quite complex sort of yard ladders and, you know, entrances to stations and the like, and that's how they're doing that. So another thing within Train Controller, what you need to do is you define all your locomotives. So this is what I'm doing here. So how they actually work is, so I can, on automatic operations, I can get a train to stop at a signal within sort of half an inch or 1 centimetre from my part of the world sort of accuracy, sometimes even less, maybe even half or quarter of an inch. And so how that is done is you do these what they call profile runs on a locomotive. So you got a given, it's time over distance effectively. So it's got 3 blocks. So it's got the entrance blocks, the timing block, and the block out the other side, which are all have to be in sequence. So if you were to take a look at the screen that I've got up here, so your timing distance will be block 2. So what you end up doing is, I'll just stop that for a sec quickly. It'll go through each speed step. So it takes quite a while. So a locomotive will take a half an hour to profile properly, but it does it automatically. The program will do it. So what that's actually doing, so the program will know for that locomotive that over a given distance of whatever that block distance is, and you put it in how many inches or centimeters, depending what part of your world, that it'll time it over each speed step, forward and reverse. So, and then it just creates a graph on how that's doing, how that's done. So that what that does is when a train comes into a block and it's giving a ramp down of speed instruction from the computer, it knows how quickly it has to stop that locomotive, because it knows at a given speed step over distance how how it runs and how it's going to stop over that distance. I'm hoping that sort of makes sense. It's a little bit convoluted, sort of how it works, but the process is quite easy. So also you can go into Auto, into Train Controller, and put in your wagon sets. I don't do a lot of wagon sets. I know there's people out there that will set every wagon up what they have in a train. You can actually use photos and you bring it into another off-the-shelf product called the Animator, because Train Controller wants a certain type of file format which you can't without running it through this program. That's quite easy to do. So within Train Controller as well, you can define different parameters, I suppose. So particularly with the locomotives, you say for a steam locomotive, you can set the parameters on how much coal and water it takes, and you need to set up certain parts within, say, a coaling facility, where you then come across into a coaling facility to take on water or coal, and if you don't, your locomotive basically just stops because it runs out of fuel effectively, or you can do that with your diesel. So when you're setting up your locomotive, sorry, just quickly, what you can also do is you can set up the length, the weight, and the horsepower. So what that actually does is it gives you more prototypical stopping and accelerating, I suppose, over time, over distance again. So it's all these parameters you can put into it. So you can't just, like, you know, a big long freight train that's heavy with an underpowered locomotive will take its time to get up to speed and also to stop. So it's just a little, what the Germans call funiculars, I suppose, within that. Okay, so any sort of questions you got here? So what I'll quickly show, if there's nothing here, is just how the simulator will work within Train Controller. So what the simulator allows you to do is you can purely go through your whole layout before you build it and see how it's going to react within the train control environment. So, and I'll show you, I'll just buzz forward here a little bit. So what I'm doing here is the building blocks of what I was talking about before, of schedules. So what a schedule is not, as I said, not a time schedule. It's a geographical, so A to B, and likewise. So so I'm just here with it. There's different ways of doing it. This one is what they call auto train. So I can literally just click the button at the top of the screen here in what they call in the ribbon or the toolbar, and then I can then drop the icon anywhere in the layout, and the train will just find its best route through, set all the collision avoidance, set all the points, set all the signals, and it'll go off on its merry way. So what that actually does is that's the building blocks of setting up more sophisticated schedules, which you'll then save into the layout program like I do. So what I'm doing here on the screen is you then can set up what they call soft buttons. So it's a button within Train Controller that you then allocate that schedule to. So it's just a matter of clicking the button. So, and then on the back side of that, you can then create automation, which is another thing, Jim, that is used, that so something automatically can happen. So I've set up many schedules where a schedule will run from, say, point A to point B under automatic control, and then it'll stop on a different schedule at point C, and then I have to take over manual control of the train. And that'll, you know, the train will advise me of that. So I've set up an operation part of it where it'll just sit there and it'll start blowing its horn at me. So I know that the horn on the locomotive off the DCC decoder tells me that I need to control that train, and I'll have a flashing icon on my switchboard. So what I'm doing here is just running the simulator. You can see the simulator here is at the top. So that's actually a program, a feature, as I said before, that allows you to fact find, get out little bugs within Train Controller regarding how it might run. It's obviously can't test how good your physical wiring is to your detection, but it's taking best case scenario that your detection's working properly, and it'll allow you to do all your all your automation there. So there's a myriad of things you can do with this program, and that screen I just was going into is you can set up different rules within the schedules and how they run. I've set up, some automatic buttons there now that'll just like, it'll toggle through the schedules. So I'll probably stop that there now, unless you got any more questions on sort of how. That's a very, very quick, brief overview on how train controller goes together in the PC world, anyway. So,
Darren, let me ask you a question. Did you have to do anything special to your locomotives for train controller?
That is a very good question. Yes, what you need to do is you can't, because the computer's taking over to a certain degree the brake and the acceleration in some cases. You had to, I can't remember the exact, obviously the CV, the 5, was it the 3, 5, and 6, or 4, 5, 6? I can't remember which ones it is. So the low speed, the mid, the high speed, and yes, you dial them right down to just a few. So when you do these profile runs, you do this other run. You basically run it on the lowest speed step you can before it starts jerking the locomotive. So it's got to be nice and smooth, and that's sort of what they call the threshold speed of it. So yeah, you do. You got to, each locomotive sort of goes on the programming track, and you do play around with that. So for the purist who likes their locomotives running very prototypical, it is a little more difficult to do that within train controller, but with a lot of playing around, it can be done.
You mentioned the timing track. For train, what do you have to do? You have to run the locomotive with the train through a certain stretch of track to time it, and then.
So basically, you just you pick 3 sections, or what they call 3 blocks in a row. Just let me go back. I'll just play this tutorial quickly again. All right, so if you can sort of see that there. So so at the very bottom, can you see where my mouse is running across here?
Yes.
So that is my programming section of track there. So where that red section is, it's BY1. That's actually broken into 2 different isolated blocks. That's just the way it represents. So within train controller. So my train starts here on BY1. It'll obviously set that point correctly. And when you go into when you're adding a locomotive section of train controller, so when you're actually adding your locomotives to the program, you set up the profile run, and you just go into and click which blocks it is, or which detection, and then it just populates out. Then you go, okay, so I know my profile run here is 195 centimeters, so I don't know what that is in inches, but obviously you can change it to the inch as well, and the program preferences. But so then you just push start, and then the train will go off in speed step 1. It'll come onto the programming track, and you do nothing to it. The program run is purely done by train controller, and then at the end of it. So. And
then that information is used whenever the train is running.
Correct. So that gets saved into what they call a locomotive file within train controller. So each locomotive has its own file, so to speak, which you don't do anything with. The program will access that itself. So, and then obviously when a train's coming up to a red signal, it's coming into a block. As soon as it hits that block, it knows, okay, you're on speed step 32 or whatever. It knows 32, it's going to take this amount of time to slow that down.
I got you. Thank you.
So yeah, it's quite accurate. As I said, I can get it within probably a quarter of an inch, I suppose, which is pretty good over 2 meters. So some locomotives take more work than others, purely just the way of design, because obviously it's all done off current pickup. So just away from train control a little bit, sort of more the evolution of the fall-on drive railway. So this is the bit that I what they call Batunga staging. So this is the bit that I salvaged from my last layout, and you can sort of see the arrow that I'll have pointing through this, exactly what that is. So that's sort of what that looks at. So for the track plan, that sits in underneath. It doesn't sort of sit proud like that. It's just the way it was represented on the program. It's a bit easier to. So this was very early on in the build. That would have been sort of very early on in 2009 when I started building that. So this is as we sort
how
of.
many levels do you have, Darren?
On that section, there's about 4 or 5 levels. It's a little bit, yeah, sort of like sub-levels. So you can imagine, I'll sort of trace it around. So a train will come through this staging yard. So it'll start over here from this top belay yard. It'll sort of and you sort of lose the train. It'll hit this section of track here where the arrow is. It'll come across here, and it'll just basically, it's a long climb. So be mindful from sort of from here to here is the best part of 23 feet, I suppose, in your language, I suppose. So it's a very slow climb, sort of between the 2 and 3, which is, you know, still quite steep in HO standards, but the European stuff, I have no issue with getting it up sort of that sort of height. So sort of just switches back on itself, which adds.
Darren,
yep.
What's that? What is that in metric? And I'll convert it.
Be 7 meters, 7 or 8 meters.
So 700
7 meters. Yeah, 7,000 millimeters. Yeah.
Okay, that's about 275.5 inches.
Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you. So the Europeans, because obviously the gent that designed this layout is a German from my local store. So they, as you can see, they build layouts very differently to what I think you folk in the United States and Canada might. The base is the same, so it's sort of an open grid, but then you build what you basically, if you can sort of see here, these scenery boards, these vertical boards here are all sliced into their levels. If you can imagine, you know, you start with the bottom level and then the next level's so many inches further up, and then you sort of, you know, but as you go across from front to back, there's what am I trying to say? You can, I'll go to the next slide. It makes it a little bit easier to see. So that's a better example. So you can sort of see a rather fuzzy photo. I apologize for that, but you sort of got the very front, which is here where this lamp is. So as you sort of go across, we got what I call the ravine track that sort of winds its way up to where this gentleman is here. Then that sort of in underneath sort of comes around in this track here, and where this arrow is sort of pointing here, just this section here is pretty well, that hasn't been built in this photo. That comes through here, then goes into the helix. Then where this rather large bridge is what I call the alpine area. So that's just more of the incline sort of coming around, and as it goes through what I call the form boards to do the climb over that given distance. So that's obviously a lot further along. That's that same bridge where we're working before. So that comes off the helix through here where where it's indicating with the arrow. So that's that bridge there. That's my understanding is a bridge, I think, in either Austria or Switzerland. I didn't build it. I'm glad I didn't, because there's quite a lot of parts to that. But that gentleman that was standing in a few photos before, that's he built that for me. So I can't remember which gentleman it was before, was asking about, with 4-foot radius curves, how do I sort of get to the other side of it? So you can sort of see on that photo where the backdrop's going to end up being. Just if you sort of draw a line straight down, there's actually probably a 2-foot gap between this here and the back wall of the layout. It's not very apparent on that photo, but there's an aisleway. I can basically walk the whole length pretty well from, if you can sort of see, I'm back over on the diagram here, from left-hand side all the way through to here. I can walk all the way back through here. So that allows, you know, you to get back there for cleaning track or derailments and everything else in between. So Murphy's Law is I haven't had derailments there, but the places I haven't been so prudent about putting aisleways is where I have my problems. So, but you get that. So
that is a really impressive bridge.
it's a beautiful bridge, isn't it? Yeah. So to give you some sort of idea, that would be, it'd have to be 3.5 feet long, 3 feet long, maybe.
A little over a meter.
Yeah.
Yeah, because meter's
Yeah,
39 inches, give or take.
Yeah, so it's a bit over, yeah, so a bit over three feet then. So it was a bit of a bugger to put in.
HO scale.
All HO. This is all HO. Yes, sorry, I didn't point that out. Yep, all HO. So this section now is probably the bit that the scenery is in its nearly finished, I suppose. So you can sort of see through here where we're looking at. It's a little more compressed than that diagram there. I sort of had to bring this bridge here a little bit further along, just purely because I had issues bringing tracks out of underneath the yard and the like. That was sort of a little bit of an alteration I had to make. So you can sort of see this one, I don't have a aisleway behind it. This is probably mistake number one that I made in this section anyway. I've been able to sort of get around it because I had small kids that can help me build things, and my wife's fitting in between joists and the like, but we finally got there with it. So that is some of the photos of that section in its sort of nearly finished. There's a little bit of detail left to go on it, but that's sort of that station area. So you can sort of see that there, sort of that photo at the top there is obviously these bridges here, slightly different angle, but that's the how the scenery went together for this at that point. So to sort of give you an idea, this section back here, the little village section, I built off layout out in the shop, so to speak, and I just got my wife to help me lift it into the area. It was just going to be too hard to do what I needed to do with it, so because I couldn't get behind it. So as I said, mistake number one, but that's how I got around that. So those photos, these ones here on the right hand side, they're only taken the other week. I had this forest along the front here was all taken down for doing this scenery at the back here. So I've replanted that, and I've just got to go through and touch up some of the scenery, and that bit should be finished. So I know, sorry, jumping around timeline here a little bit, but so this portion here is the very start of me building the yard, my classification yard, I suppose. This classification yard is approximately, it would be, I think the longest track is about 5 meters long. So what would that be? 15 or 16 feet long in your neck of the woods. So they're not long trains. European trains are not very, particularly the era I'm modeling, and not the actual wagons are not very long. So I didn't really need a very, big, long holding facility or classification yards. So that's the very the infancy of that boardwork or that sub road bed. So as I sort of went along, things have changed a little bit differently with this. I've since put mistake number 3 I made on this. Where I live is quite a dusty environment, even though this is pretty well totally sealed with the way we built it, but we still get dust coming in from time to time. And as we all know, dust is the vein of our existence in this hobby. No matter how much we clean the tracks, I've ended up pretty well putting a false roof over this whole layout, so I can, and I think I've got photos coming up bit further down the track where I've got tarpaulins. There was some gent that I got the idea from in a model railroader many years ago. So you basically pull tarpaulins down. So when your layout's not being used, it's not getting dust coming into it. So
worse than dust.
So yes, cat
hair.
Yeah, well, I don't have cats. I got dogs, but he's not. We've got a new German Shepherd, and I'm not putting him in here. He's only 2, and he's still a bit of what we call a nutbag over here, and he'll just ruin things. But my previous dogs, I used to come into the layout room and just sit on the nice cool floor in the summer because it's quite nice in here on the floor, cold floor. So yeah, this is another section I do have an aisleway. So I pretty well, yet again, this aisleway I can get from sort of top left of screen here all the way across the back here. That's probably another 2-foot section that so I can get to all those tracks. It's not really shown in the track diagram here, but there are different levels. So this Belay yard is a step down from what I call local mixtion, which is this next section up, which is probably my largest passenger sort of station area. So the step up there would be approximately 4 inches, I think from memory. So that's me putting the what have I done there? Just the sky background that I've put through. So I got that from a chap out of the United States, and his name eludes me. Not Scenic Express. Backdrop Warehouse or Background Warehouse or something similar.
Yeah, Backdrop Warehouse.
Yeah, so I've since so they basically come out in 12-foot sections. I'm still not sort of happy the way I've done it. It's a little bit wrinkly still, but I think it'll do moving forward. So this is obviously now we're getting into the nuts and bolts of obviously the trackage on the yard side of things. It's pretty well, that is the configuration. I think they might have changed a few turnouts over the years, but and you can sort of see that aisleway in the back next to that scenery board, even though I've got that little duck under there. That's purely for structural rigidity. But then the next that lower Mitcham station, which is up here, sort of is propped up on that section through there. So that's looking what I would call westbound on my layout towards the turntable. So that's one of my little babies, a little Brawa. What's that? An 010. So a little steam locomotive from, I think that's German, that one, because it's got black and red. So
yeah,
not quite sure why I like German, but anyway, I don't have German descent, so I'm more English in background. But sorry, someone had something to say.
Darren, I know you're modeling European. Have you picked a specific area or region?
Not really. I'm a little bit ad hoc with my modeling. If you've sort of noticed, I like.
Never would have noticed.
Sorry.
Never would have noticed.
I like the greenery of the European countryside. So that's sort of very indicative of obviously the sort of that Barham station that I showed you before. Obviously that is very European, that the way I've constructed that scenery. And I would love to meet this gentleman one day. He is probably in the vein of a Howard Zane or a George Selios, or sort of that from your neck of the woods. His name is Joseph Brandel, and I think this gentleman he's probably the best landscape modeler I think going around, and he is just insane what this man can do in a model railway. That's my opinion anyway. So I do model a lot of my scenery sort of around here, but sort of to depict any sort of given location, no, it's all very, very freelance. My model trains, I suppose, sort of all based around my family. That's how, my upbringing. So Belair is a town that I grew up in Adelaide. it was a little line side station. They had one platform. It just definitely didn't have a big classification yard. So it's a bit of a tongue in cheek that I've sort of just named it Belee Yard, but that's sort of what I'm about. Sort of I take things to the nth degree, I suppose, and name them after, you know, various things within my life, I suppose, or influences. So that's sort of how I come about it.
Darren, when you get a chance, could you send me the person's name that you just mentioned, and if you have it, contact information for him?
Yeah, I'd love to be able to get contact information myself. His name's Joseph Brandel, but I'll send you his name. I'll write that down here. So if you ever get in contact with him, and you please let me know, because I'd like to chat to him as well.
Yeah, and vice versa. If you do it first.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. He does some lovely books. There's unfortunately they're all in German, and I don't read German, which is but you know, they're the type of books that he does, how-to books, but the photo, because he's a photographer by trade, so his photography is just gorgeous. So, or photos, I should say, not photography, but so you can pick up so much just by just looking at his photos, and that's sort of how that is that vein is very much influenced how I do my scenery, I suppose. So yeah, so we're just moving around the layout here. Please tell me if you want me to skip through this a little bit quicker, if it's of interest to you. So yes, I'm just sort of moving, you know, as I sort of moved around the layout. I'm probably the next slide is, I'm a very firm believer of getting up trains running as quickly as I can. So, but what I mean by that is not so much point to point, even though that's how I'll run my operations. This layout might be a bit hard to believe, but it's pretty well just two circles of track that intersect in two different locations, with a whole lot of tracks in between. That's pretty well the way it's designed. So this area here, I call the Battleship. This piece of circular track, this reverse loop here, followed, and it's the board still exists, followed this layout around in its inception within probably the last 12 years. So, because I just wanted to run trains around whilst I built, and I still do that. I run trains as I'm building. So it started out being sort of around here when I bought that staging yard in the first few photos, and then it ended up sort of this top left corner. So just as I sort of built around the layout, so I could just continue to run trains in a loop fashion, so to speak, I use this. So this photo here is where this location is here, which is what I call Pioneer Station. So you gentlemen may not be aware, there's a product, a German product called Trix that built, it's called the Damter Station, which is in Hamburg, Germany. So this station here is approximately, and it's in scale, the best part of nearly 5 feet long in the structure, and I've built it in sections. I've weathered the front facade of it. Unfortunately, I don't have a photo of it here, but that's where it sort of sits in there, which will be sort of a major station, and it sits about the best part of 9 inches high, 9 to 12 inches high. It's a beautiful old stone looking building, so I've sort of weathered that up the way I've done that. So this here is sort of another milestone sort of section. So as I said, we have a lot of dust problems, even though this is very reasonably sealed sort of structure this is in. I initially had these hanging from the ceiling, but then I need to be able to get to them. So these boxes at the top here are industrial air purifiers, effectively. So they'll obviously have filters in them, and then I'll, after big jobs, when I'm using either scenery or drilling or whatever else doing in there, I will run these for a good 4 or 5 hours on a timer, just to suck as much dust out of the air as I can. So this structure here is the bit overkill. However, what that allows me to do is that's the sub base for the what are we calling this whole set of track here, which is the other staging. which is an upper and a lower staging area, which we'll slowly get to in a sec. So this is the bottom section of that staging area. It's obviously a little bit further along. Sort of the way I wired this was a little bit different because I couldn't run wires underneath it just purely because of the levels of it. So all the wiring is sort of through channels. You might not be able to see it all that well. I'll get you the next photo. So you can sort of see how I've done it there. Sort of run channels under there. So that's a 3mm cork that's sitting on cork road bed, and I sort of run all the dropper wires. So each one of those tracks has got 4 isolated blocks on it. So they're how long are those? They're about 4 meters long, I think, the longest track. So, and we've got 5 tracks on the bottom, 6 on the top. So you can imagine the wiring that comes back for each one of those gets quite cumbersome, the way that's actually from the hardware point of view. So as I was sort of the theme is to keep running trains. So this I was building separately, whilst I could still run trains on this other bit with this, that loop section I had here before. So I could build this all independently. I could test it. So I knew all the electrics were sound before I then had to do this section here, which was quite complex. It's 4 tracks, but there's 2 tracks that sort of come over the top of each other, and it was I had to be quite careful with my rise and fall. I was a little bit lucky. The track, if you look at it, where in one side of the track you're probably looking at 5 or 6% grade, but it's on a downhill grade and it's going to be hidden, so it sort of doesn't matter too much, but I was able to get into it that way. So I've sort of built the top section. I'm not quite sure, I don't have many photos, but the top section you can sort of see is running up this rather crooked track that I've since fixed up, sort of runs around, and then the second layer of the yard sort of sits just above this section here, which is another track that sort of punches out the other side, and these are all reverse loops each end. Here, the way I wire it. So you would look at that and you'd go, that's not a reverse loop. However, the way I worked it out is I'd rather have the reverse loop sitting in here, just the way I wired the rest of the yard together. I think I worked out by the time I start getting over sections like here where we start crossing over tracks is where I was going to start having problems with reversing polarity issues. So I know I can fit full lengths of trains into these sections here, so it's sort of the way that made it quite more obvious to do it. And I've done that all the way through all these other reverse loops. How I've set them up, it's just the way I moved forward, allowing to make it a lot easier to wire them, to make sure the reverse loop was could fit a full length train of mine. So this is this section here. It's changed quite significantly, that track work compared to what it is there in real life. So the reason I did that was I had a lot of issues with, I wanted to have rail car service coming out of this main station sort of area, sort of over to this lower Mitcham and then through to Barham. So that those automatic schedules I showed earlier will link into all that eventually, and I sort of had to change how this the entrance into this this station was actually constructed. So coming towards the end here, with this section here is what I call Harold Victor, named after my grandpa. So this yet again is a little bit different. It's similar, the way the way the track is constructed. It's just a little more stretched out than what is on that particular track plan, and I've got rid of this little balloon track. I've got rid of all that, but other than that, all the track is the same. So I don't have the requisite skills of, say, like a John Farquhar or something like that can design something to the nth degree and cut all the baseboard perfectly for where the track's going to go. So this was a little bit trial by error. I knew I wanted to do and how I wanted to do it, but I wasn't 100% sure where my wharves, because this is a harbour area, where they're going to go. So now I've got the track there. I've done the wiring so I can, like little bullet connectors, what we call in my part of the world. I can disconnect things, and I'll go back through and I will cut where the wharves and all that are. So that was just how I ended up doing it. So that's sort of looking in an easterly direction. Now you can see that's obviously that photo is very different compared to previous photos. So this is where I've now put the whole roof structure right over the top, so to keep the dust out. So if I just go back a few slides, so that roof section there pretty well comes out all the way from this structure here. It's another reason I built this so strong, so I could have this. It's almost like a freestanding type roof, and it's just supported very little points at the top there. So so that'll have backgrounds. So you can sort of see that station that I was talking about lying down there, that damper station, because I need to. You actually, when you build the station, you do build it on a platform, but this thing is that large. I didn't actually have a table big enough except my dining room table, and the wife wasn't very happy for me to build over 2 years this thing on that, because it's one of those buildings. It's very hard to sort of build in one lot. It's a pain in the bum to build. It's a very nice structure. However, it was a very hard model to build, so I ended up building it in facades. So I've just built the 2 facades, and then I'll build the sub road bed around it. So if that sort of makes some sort of sense how I'm doing that. So then it'll cover up, that station will cover up this whole sort of area here, so you won't see sort of any of that, and that sort of punches out through the back end, goes around a loop and goes into it comes around these loops here and comes into your hitting yards, or your staging, I should say. So the lower section's all passenger trains, the upper is all my freight trains. So, and I can dictate where I'm sending the train through train controller. So that's pretty well the Fauna Log Railway. The golden spot will get driven in somewhere in there at some stage. The track work to completion is pretty well done. I've still got some electrical glitches which I need to go back and try to iron out, which has been the vein of my existence probably for the last 2 years, maybe even longer, on and off. But so moving forward,
Darren, before you get away from the layout pictures there, it's fairly complex track work coming in and out of the H dock area, and also into your staging yards. Now, are all those routings for the turnouts controlled by train controller?
Correct. Yep. So it's like a I suppose the best way to describe it's like a one button push. So, so with mine, so if I was to run, so the way I'm at this point in time running my antiquated operation sessions, I suppose the way I'm doing it. So it's sort of an evolution and evolving how I'm going to do this. But so out of my classification yard, what I can do is with a click of a button, I can bring trains to and from my staging automatically. So I don't touch the train until I need to shunt it out. So so my staging represents, like most people, the rest of the world, I suppose. So I've got a myriad of places that I've set up on these car cards that I'll give Jim the link to, or sorry, waybills, I should say, that represent the rest of the world.
Oh, I see.
So I can,
all that is all controlled in the software.
Correct. Yep.
You
all
can
automatic.
select a staging track and another track, all with just a push of a button.
Correct. Yeah. So I can. the way I set my schedules up, and without sort of going into too much detail, because it gets a little bit probably complex, even for me to try to explain, because I didn't come up with the design. But each one of my wagon, those wagons when I was showing you within Train Controller, has its own schedule. So, and Jim, so sort of it's a yes or no type thing. So my schedules can only start if the wagon set is correct. So I can't send the wrong wagons to somewhere else on my layout. So that's another sort of, I call a feature. So what I'm meaning by that is, so all my staging wagons are what I call world 1, 2, 3 through to 6. So what I mean by world is rest of the world. So it doesn't matter what's physically, I'm not representing within Train Controller what might be physically from the operational point of view. So it might be a load of wood, treated timber going in a boxcar. I'm not concerned with what the boxcar is within Train Controller. All I'm concerned about is purely from a schedule point of view within Train Controller, routing the correct train to the correct location, if that makes sense. And then the waybill takes over the realistic side of things to tell me what that particular wagon within the train is representing. So if I've got, so I won't run a train that's any more than probably a locomotive and maybe 8 wagons, I suppose. So each one of them obviously have their own car card and waybill, but representative on Train Controller, it's only got 1 wagon. Purely that's because it's just for the schedule side of things and a few other bits and pieces to do with overall length. So I don't send a train off that is too long for any of my sidings, but that's sort of a bit more complex to try to explain. Does that sort of answer your question a little bit?
Yes,
or?
It does. Understood.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So there's 2 different competing worlds here, I suppose, if you can understand. There's the virtual world of Train Controller and try to integrate that into an American scheme of operation, because that's effectively what I'm doing. So, or trying to achieve. So as you can see, it's a real hodgepodge. So I'm an Australian designing a European layout, but running an American convention. So I'm cherry picking all the best parts. So.
Okay.
Sorry, question?
Oh, no, I'm looking at how complicated this thing is. And yeah. Well, a lot of people say that if you're doing everything by computer, you're just sitting in an ivory tower watching everything run. Yeah. You almost couldn't do that with this one, or could you?
No, I can rail fan with this. So to go back on, the difference between why I think, what Jim brought up earlier in this talk about why Americans might not take Train Controller compared to the Europeans is obviously the way they run it. But as I said, I'm cherry picking. I do like to run my trains, but I also like to get to the nitty gritty, and I like shunting trains around because I think that's right now where the fun is. But also like the flexibility if you got, have a friend over, or you don't feel like you're working on something, but you just want to see some trains running around without running into each other, having to watch them. I can set them on their merry way and they won't collide with each other. So I can sit in the ivory tower and watch trains. So, yeah.
You can, but you don't.
No. So I've yet to sort of get to a point, I think, where I'm happy with my own work regarding my electronics, if that makes sense. Because there's nothing, because I've got a lot of parts on this layout that are hidden as well, which is a very European way of doing things. Like obviously what I can see, and please tell me if I'm wrong, with the way Americans will design their layouts, there's a lot more openness, I suppose, and a lot, less, please tell me if I'm wrong, but more, I've got a lot of different layers in my layout, how I run it. Well, not how I run it, but how, how it's constructed to get from point A to point B over a given grade. But as I said, I go through stages in this hobby where I just feel like seeing trains run around, and I don't feel like interacting with them, so I'll just let a train run. But right now I'm right into shunting trains around. So that's what I'm doing. But I can then create the bridge traffic in the background with train controller and let trains run around without running into each other effectively. So
What does your term shutting around mean?
Switching.
my term shunt is switching. Sorry, your part of the world is switching. Yeah.
How much of your layout is really a switching layout versus a continuous run layout, Darren?
The way it's going to be from an operational point of view, mine's a lot of branch lines, if that makes sense. So, so my main switching areas are going to be this station area here. So I'm back over on the track diagram here. So there's a fair bit of sort of switching sort of on that sort of area. Obviously the new sort of harbour area, there's a lot of switching in there. This station here, there's a lot of switching sort of on that top station. So to give you some sort of idea, I'm 6'2" tall, so 185, 186 centimeters tall, and that's about up to about my nose height or about my chin, this area here. So that, couple that with setting up trains in my yard area, so there's enough to keep me interested. But as I think I know where you're going with this, Jim, there's not a lot between so my trains are not going to go from point A, B, C on one run. They're going to go A to B, do their switching, and then come back. And there's quite a bit of railway between my yard and my switching areas, if that makes sense. So
Right.
So in Australia, do they use the term shunter or the term shunting locomotive? Or does it depend?
It depends on what state you're in as well. I only did an operation session yesterday, and they were South Australian railways, and they were shunting, which is British, is my understanding. So obviously our railway routes are British, but
I've heard both terms, and we say switch engine.
Yeah. So I suppose my operation is I'm trying to move wagons around from industries and offline industries and online industries around my layout. So could I have done things very differently if I was sort of at a point I am now in the layout? I would have built this layout a lot differently, I think. But I'm so far into this layout, I'm not going to pull it down because by the time, I've got to scenic this thing yet as well. So that's going to take me a long time in itself. So I'm sort of happy the way it is. I'm sort of got, it's not a full operational track plan and it's not a full rail fanning track plan. It's sort of, somewhere in between. I can do a little bit of both. So
Actually, you ought to be very proud of it. It's a beautiful layout.
Yeah, I'm very happy. I've had a lot of lovely gentlemen helping me out over the years from a technical point of view, and I've been very blessed with that. So, but obviously, I think from my point of view, train control is sort of just that little cherry on the top of my pie. I think so. The way this will run. So.
Yep.
So yeah, I can go and I could talk all day about how train control will run on this thing because I've gone sort of the nth degree, as Jim, with this. So in short, I can literally take a train running automatic or semi-automatic, and I can either send it from my yard here. Oops, sorry, let me get the right screen. Belee yard, everything starts from my Belee yard to this location here, fully automatically, and I just literally then bring my shunter out to then move the wagons around to all the industries, and then I can reform the train back and send it back automatically under full collision avoidance. And at a prototypical speed, it'll take, quite a number of minutes to get back home. So back to the yard. And then I can send that train back to any yard master and they can disassemble it, and I hand them a bunch of waybills and some switch lists and away they go. So or I can literally run that train fully manually from the belay yard up to this what I call Nancy Station, with still full avoidance system depending on how many operators I got. So being able to have a lot of operators right now, what I can actually do is I can send trains out in an operating session. I might not get to them in an operating session, but when I next come into the shed, like I will this afternoon, when I get back out there, I'm going to shunt this this station around, and then send the train back to the yard, and I'll deal with it in another day. So I've got the flexibility of doing that with this the way I've set it up, I think. So.
Anybody have any more questions for Darren?
So that's pretty well it. I suppose current projects I'm working on is virtual remote operations via Wi-Fi. So that would mean people like yourselves, if you're interested, you can run trains on my layout from anywhere in the world effectively. So that's what I'm looking at doing, and you can do that with JMRI. There's some chaps doing it in Australia here. Some chaps, I don't know, a chap by the name of Gordy Robinson, he's right into it. From Scotland in the NMRA X, he's the one that runs that, and a few others that are doing this, and I've sort of picked up on, and obviously Train Controller links with this beautifully because all the switchboards are all run on a network, so to speak. So
I want to have you back and have you talk about that. I think that's fascinating. I think a lot of people might be interested in that. Because it gives operation a totally different kind of capability.
It does, and I've yet to do it. I was just talking to a chap by the name of Marty Jenkins last night. He lives here in Australia. I don't know if you might have heard that name on A Modeler's Life podcast. Yeah. He's on that quite often. He's right into it, so he's got me into these Wi-Fi cameras. And I will stop sharing my screen and I'll show you what the camera looks like. So I'll stop sharing and get back to my camera. So this is one of the cameras there.
Huh.
So to give you some sort of idea, where are we? Do I have a ruler? So that camera there is approximately 1.5 to 2 inches by inch wide.
Yeah.
And then you obviously, that's full Wi-Fi. It's all Arduino. I don't know if you're aware of what they call an Arduino sort of micro, and everything's all the what they call you flash the drive. It's putting a program on a computer basically. So that's what that is. So
that's
what I'm getting into.
About those on my show this weekend on Saturday. Yeah. What is an Arduino? Because I've heard that question 100 times.
Arduino's like a.
It's not a computer per se.
No,
it's a micro.
It's like a little micro. It's like a little microprocessor computer that you can do all sorts with. I haven't even touched the surface with it. I do that, and I've got another one called Raspberry Pi, which is like a.
That is a little.
Same. Yeah, so they're the same. They're a bit same, but different in.
Generally, the difference is a Raspberry Pi is a computer system. It has a really complete operating system that's application focused, where Arduino is more of an embedded processor, and it's really designed to be embedded to a specific functionality. Cool thing about it, you get Arduinos cheap enough now, you can put them in a building to run the lighting on a random scheme. There are people doing that now.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
They buy them for a couple of bucks.
Oh, yeah. I've seen the little tiny ones with a Wi-Fi chip on them for $1 if you buy 20 at a time.
Well, this one here, obviously, in Australia, we pay twice as much anywhere else in the world, but that's full Wi-Fi. So that whole rig for me.
I don't understand that. You're closer to China than we are. Why would you pay more?
Well, the Chinese don't like us. The Chinese don't like us
I'm
right
teasing.
now. So.
I'm implying it should be cheaper to get it from there to you than it should be from there to us.
But well, there's a whole lot of things like a whole lot of political things that sit in behind that, like the wages here in Australia are a lot more in the US and that type of thing. So, but we digress from model trains. But I see Jim is thinking very, very intently about these cameras, aren't you? I can tell.
Yes, I am.
I have seen little cameras.
Yeah.
Wi-Fi cameras.
He's not really thinking, it's just confusion.
Excuse me.
Thank you, Clark.
Well, he doesn't have his tongue in it. So I'm looking at doing those on as a part of my virtual operating scheme, to put either probably a mixture of both, having on a flatbed wagon with a USB memory, or not a USB memory stick, but USB battery bank. So right now I'm testing with a battery bank. I don't know how, give you some sort of idea the size of that.
Have you thought about using ESP 32 with a camera?
Yep, that's what that is. That's an ESP.
Oh, is that
32,
okay? That's what it is. Okay.
Yeah. So I've tried. I'm going to probably use these probably as what I'm going to call my rail fanning cameras.
Right.
So I'm going to put cameras throughout prominent points within the rail fan, and then obviously a virtual operator will be able to come in via my website and access these well, no, we don't do it via that. They'll come in via my website to access my train controller, and then I'll live stream via what they call Streamlabs OBS, which is like a gaming protocol to bring all the camera feeds together, which will then go out via Zoom or Skype or something to the individual so they can see that. And then I'm looking at the Raspberry Pi side of things to put these on a wagon, so you'll have like a cab view of a
there's actually a Raspberry Pi, and it can control the camera itself.
Yeah.
But there's one that's only about that big.
Yeah. I actually have one.
Raspberry Pi W.
Yep, I got one here. Hang on, if you're interested in
very
seeing.
tiny.
So that's the Raspberry Pi. So they're a little bit bigger in size, but still not. So that's the Raspberry Pi there with the camera, and that's
the W or
that's the W, yeah.
Oh, bigger! It's bigger than I would think it would be.
Yeah, but mind you, on a flatbed wagon, that the beauty of these are everything gets flashed. Clark, to probably answer your question, or everything gets flashed with a micro SD card. With that's the Raspberry Pi.
Right.
This has got full HDMI input, so you can put a computer screen with it.
That's the reason I say that a Raspberry Pi is a computer, because it's got a network port and USB ports and all that on it, whereas the Arduino is just all these pins you cook everything to.
That's right. You bake it in. Yeah, you're exactly right. So my understanding, and I found this out last night, so the Arduino ESP32, sorry, isn't a true video feed. I don't quite understand. I was talking to Martin Jenkins, and he's right up with the virtual operation side of things.
Don't talk to Martin. Do not talk to Martin. He will take you down some crazy rabbit hole.
Yeah. We talked about rabbit holes because I was on his group last night. Well, he's already taken me. No, well, not so much him. I'll blame Gordy Robinson for this.
Oh, well,
so if he's ever watching, Gordy, I'm blaming you. He took me down the rabbit hole of virtual or remote operations. So that's that's where I am now. So
how far away? I'm not sure. I missed the first part of the whole night, so I'm sorry. How far away do you live from Martin?
So I'm in southern Australia. So and Martin's obviously in east or sort of northeast. So it'd be a three day drive.
Oh, okay.
Well,
that's good. That's good.
We do have aeroplanes over here and running water, but that's only just happened in Australia. So.
Yeah. No. And I'm sorry, I'm kind of deviating because I know several guys that I used to really hang out with, Australian guys. David North, David. He's a Santa Fe modeler.
No, not
or
really, no.
John Saxon.
I know of that name.
He's an NMRA. He basically reconstituted NMRA Australia. So. Right.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah.
The Santa Fe guy too.
Yeah. So the other rabbit hole I've gone down, I've started doing 3D printing. So, but that's number 4. I might come back for number 4 for that one, Jim. I think. So.
Martin's trying to get me into those radio controlled cars he gets from.
Oh, I don't even want to go there.
That's what I said to him, but I got sucked in.
Yeah.
Like he's come up with a scheme where he'll run on his operations, he'll run his train into, say, an intermodal yard. He then has a DCC controlled train that'll unload the train with the container on the side of the right of way, or side of the track. He'll then have his remote control cars that he'll control, potentially drive up to the open container like a forklift and simulate people unloading the container. Yeah, exactly. Like, obviously, yeah, unbelievable.
Enough's enough, guys.
Yeah. But his are all got independent, like he's got 4-wheel drives and they're all dependent. Oh, he's just,
don't go there. I don't want to.
I'm not going to go there. I don't want to go there because he gets them out of Japan, I think, doesn't he? So.
I thought it was China, but I could be wrong.
Right.
Okay. I'm not going to go looking for it right now, but
no, you won't come out of the hole before Christmas 2021.
Well, I told him I'm carrying a big sheet of plywood with me, and every time he starts talking, I have to put it down so I don't go down that hole.
Yeah. I was only talking to him last night, so yeah.
Well, batteries. The thing you held up has what's called an 18650, if you know the size of battery.
Yeah.
There is
a USB battery bank.
There is a type of lithium battery called a 14500, which is about the size of a AA. And would probably be enough power if you're running that little ESP32 at 3.3. You can run it on that little battery.
Yeah, you can go 3.3 or 5. Yeah. Well, to give you some sort of idea, this will be 10 years old, and I really don't use it. I did a test with the ESP just the other day, and I was up to 4 hours running this on my Wi-Fi. So, doesn't take a lot of juice, that's for sure. So.
No. I don't know the numbers on it, but there's a little 3-point whatever lithium battery that's the size of an N. You guys remember N batteries? They used to use them in clocks. Little bitty.
Oh yeah, I know the ones. Yeah.
They're not even an inch long, I don't think. And they were running cameras like you're talking about for like 6 hours on one battery.
Yeah.
You don't want to operate trains for 6 hours at a time.
No, that's right. You don't want to have to recharge them halfway through either, because sometimes they can be a bit buggy connecting to your Wi-Fi. But
yeah, I've got some tech I'm working on to where the Wi-Fi signal going out, the radio waves going into the ESP can actually be tapped for power and would charge your battery for you while it's talking to something else.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Don't say that too loudly.
Yeah.
Listen, Darren,
Jim, sorry, you want to get in?
I really do appreciate you being here tonight. I can't thank you enough. And I will have you back, no question about it. Just let me know when you're ready to talk about this virtual stuff.
Yeah, well, I can probably.
Hey, there's Paul.
I'm actually writing an article on my journey for the Modeler's Journal. That's yet to be published, but I'm up to number 2. So my first part is obviously the train controller side of things, and then the second part that I'm in the midst of writing now is how I've look at doing the actual operations, and then I think there's going to be a third part, actually, how I'm going to put all this together and communicate with people. But I'll jump down that hole with young Marty, I think. So we'll hold each other's hands and be a long fall, I think. So.
Well, I hope you have fun with it, at least as much fun as you've had getting this far.
Yes, it's been a journey. It's been a journey.
Well, listen, thanks again so much. I really do appreciate it. And every time you're here, I learn an awful lot that I'm sorry I learned. And I hate to say that, but when my eyes started to roll over when you started talking Raspberry Pi and Windows and so forth.
After Saturday, you will understand.
That's so far past whatever I've ever tried to do electronically. It's funny, but I really do appreciate it, Darren. You've been a fantastic guest, and thank you so very much.
Fun. Yeah. Normally people, when we talk Raspberry Pi, they start licking their lips thinking it's something we're going to Not on this occasion, no.
I've actually had Raspberry Pi. It tastes very good, but that's not what I'm going to be talking about.
Well, very good. So I look forward to that. I'll see you on that one. That'll be good.
You can watch the show Saturday, and after the My Build, you can come on and say, TC, you didn't know a thing you were talking about.
Well, you know more than what I do, so.
Well, anyway. That Saturday, Chris Gross is going to lead us through the My Build section, and I hope you'll show up with some models and show us what you're working on and give us some help in being able to improve our modeling. And TC is going to talk about electronics and give us his electronic know-how, which I'm looking forward to. And TC, I appreciate you. I appreciate your willingness to do that. So thanks so much for coming, everybody. I appreciate it, and come back often and see us again. And with that, good night to everybody.